The member from Prince Edward Hastings.
Thanks, Speaker. Good morning, Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Energy. The People's Guarantee lays out Patrick Brown and the PC's plan for hydro in Ontario. Under Premier Wynne and the Liberals, we know that hydro rates have tripled. In fact, families are paying on average $1,000 more a year than when the Liberal government was first elected back in 2003. The People's Guarantee is a plan to get hydro back on track. It provides an additional 12% off hydro bills. That means the average household will save $173 per year on their hydro bill under Patrick Brown and the Ontario PCs. So, Mr. Speaker, isn't that a plan that even the Liberals can get behind?
Thank you. Minister of Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's becoming quite clear that the PCs and their leader can't be trusted. They've now decided to say anything to anybody to make sure that they can get elected. Months after trying to deny, Mr. Speaker, that our 25% reduction on bills for families and as many as 500,000 small businesses and farms, by voting against our Fair Hydro plan, they're now sneakily, Mr. Speaker, including it in their own platform. Worse than that claim about reducing further rates is reckless and only opens up an even larger hole, Mr. Speaker, in their already gaping fiscal plan. I believe the proof is in the fine print at the back of their platform. Over $12 billion, Mr. Speaker, in cuts. This includes over $6 billion of across-the-board unspecified cuts. And shifting, of course, Mr. Speaker, conservation programs from costs from taxpayers. Again, making sure their fiscal hole continues to grow, Mr. Speaker. We've acted to support families on this side.
Thank you. Supplementary.
Speaker, more Liberal spin. They're just hoping that something actually sticks, but it's not. Just look at what our leader said this morning. He wanted you to consider this. Premier Wynne and the Liberals accepted $1.3 million in donations from companies who received the biggest contracts for energy that we don't need any longer in Ontario. That meant these insider contracts resulted in families overpaying on their electricity bills by $9.2 billion. That's the biggest reason why our electricity bills are skyrocketing. Then, to make matters worse, the Wynne Liberals sold off Hydro One. It was a fire sale to reward her donors, insiders, and fat cat friends. That's why this government can't be trusted after 14 long years. So, Mr. Speaker, I do wonder, when did the Liberals decide that they were going to be for the insiders and not for the people who are paying the hydro bills?
It makes you wonder, Mr. Speaker, actually, who is defending families, and on this side of the House that is actually defending families, Mr. Speaker. We brought forward a 25% reduction that all families are seeing, but it begs the question, Mr. Speaker, because under their plan, costs are going to rise. Let's look at their carbon tax, Mr. Speaker. The truth is that under their carbon tax scheme, you'll pay more and get less. Independent expert analysis from the C.D. Howe Institute, for example, confirms this, Mr. Speaker, showing their carbon tax would add $1,200 in annual costs for families. And this is more than any of the tax cuts that the Conservatives claims to be offering as well, Mr. Speaker. The National Post has called it a shell game, noting that any tax cut will be paid for by an 81% increase in the existing provincial tax on gasoline, Mr. Speaker. When it comes to energy, it is this government that has brought forward serious reductions for families from right across this province, Mr. Speaker.
Final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, I can understand why the minister would rather talk about cap and trade than talk about hydro, because their record over the last 13 years is repugnant when it comes to the hydro plan. Our electricity plan, our hydro plan, unlike the Liberals, isn't a risky borrowing scheme. We're not going to spend billions of dollars in interest just to get through the next election, Mr. Speaker. Our plan, the People's Guarantee, offers real, lasting relief for the people of Ontario on their hydro bills. 12% more off hydro bills is the People's Guarantee. We think families in Ontario deserve that after paying the fastest rising rates in North America thanks to this government. Mr. Speaker, don't the Liberals realize Ontario deserves long-lasting hydro relief?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The only thing that that party is guaranteeing is that everything is going to go up in Ontario. That's their guarantee, Mr. Speaker. They're actually even talking about our Fair Hydro plan, the 25% that we actually brought forward, and they voted against, Mr. Speaker. They talk about it all the time, but they have nothing, Mr. Speaker, that is actually going to do anything that will actually help the families that the way we have done on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker. And given the gap that we know that is in their plan, Mr. Speaker, we know that across-the-board cuts are coming, just like the Harris years, putting both existing and future programs at risk. We already know investments like the $300 million in home and school retrofits, the $575 million in social housing repairs will be scrapped once the Conservatives drop cap and trade and create a more expensive carbon tax. But what else, Mr. Speaker? Are they going to cancel the OESP program? Are they going to cancel the First Nation delivery credit? Are they going to make sure that they eliminate the $100 million affordability fund? Mr. Speaker, all they know how to do